high-level presence of GMOs in grain, simply referred to as LLP, is not a safety issue, it is a market access issue that can cause years of delays in the introduction of beneficial new innovations, raise the price of food and goods for consumers, and cost the agriculture sector millions of dollars. Seed companies submit information to meet applicable regulatory requirements in key export markets to help prevent LLP. Ideally, exporting and importing markets approve the particular GMO at roughly the same time, thereby reducing the potential for an LLP occurrence. What if a particular GMO is approved and starts being grown in exporting countries before an importing country has issued its approval? Agricultural goods must comply with an importing country's laws if they are traded. Seed companies, farmers, grain companies and importers all employ measures to reduce the potential for LLP and to deliver safe and high-quality commodities that meet market requirements. But in a system as large, complex and global as agriculture, and in the absence of synchronized approvals or mutual recognition, LLP can never be completely eliminated. That's why clear and trade-facilitative LLP policies like LLP thresholds are needed. Let's walk through some examples to learn more about the measures or process controls that are used by the supply chain to manage LLP and keep it within the limits of a well-designed threshold policy. Let's begin with seed. Every year, seed companies release new varieties that increase yields, improve crop health, and create better products for consumers. Standards such as the OECD seed schemes set out rules for the proper storing, labeling, and monitoring of seed as it is multiplied and made ready for sale to the farmers. Process controls like these help to minimize the potential for seed to become a source of LLP through mixing of seed or pollen flow. Next, consider that it may take several years to produce enough seed to supply all the farmers who may want to grow a particular new variety. This means that in the first year or two, when there are limited amounts of seed available, seed companies may focus sales geographically in regions where grain is grown mainly for domestic markets rather than for export. Limiting the grain to a single market or region provides a cushion of an extra year or two in which additional importing country approvals may catch up. Farmers are the next link in the value chain. When buying seed, they look for varieties that will perform well on their farms and meet the needs of their grain buyers in domestic or international markets. If the farmer produces different varieties for different buyers, then careful cleaning of machinery, storage bins and trucks is another process control undertaken to minimize LLP at farm level. Grain handlers are the next link in the chain, and they work closely with farmers to deliver grain that meets market needs. For instance, contracts between grain handlers and farmers may specify that the specific GMOs grown must be approved by importing countries. Or some grain elevators may be able to accept grain intended for certain markets only at certain times, which can help to minimize LLP. Grain handlers may also monitor for LLP as part of their routine quality control measures. Despite such actions, it is impossible to completely prevent commingling of grain, and even grain dust, as storage and transportation containers are emptied and refilled during the journey from farm to end user. You may have heard the terms identity preserved or closed loop, and wondered if these are grain production and handling systems that can be used to manage LLP. It is true that grain is sometimes produced and marketed with processes that provide for unique characteristics, restricted uses, labeling requirements, or markets with atypical requirements. But these systems require extensive documentation, production and handling controls, so they increase costs and may reduce the available supply of grain. These systems do not guarantee zero LLP of a particular GMO, and they do not mitigate the need for practical LLP policies. Although process controls are in place at every step of the value chain, with seed companies, farmers and grain handlers all helping to minimize the potential for LLP, achieving zero is ultimately not practical. This is why LLP policies, like setting a 5% threshold for acceptance, are needed. When time gaps in specific GMO approvals cannot be avoided, LLP policies are an effective interim measure that importing countries can use to maintain an uninterrupted supply of safe and affordable grain. And by being aware of all the process controls in place all along the value chain, an importing country can be confident that an LLP threshold, should they choose to set one, can be achieved. With everyone doing their part, the value chain working to minimise LLP, and governments providing predictable timeframes for product reviews or LLP policies, the challenges of LLP can be reduced, and we can ensure consumers have a reliable supply of safe and affordable commodities. For more information, please visit gabbit.org.